Okay, sir, we are starting. Good morning, everyone who has joined us for yet another interesting session of Tinkerpreneur. Today, we have a very interesting topic on how to make a strong pitch for your business. And for this, we have a very special guest, Mr. Raghuram, joining us to conduct the session. Mr. Raghuram is an alum of ISC. He is the co-founder and chief product officer of a tech startup called Aspecto Technologies, which is based out of Hyderabad. Their products use the latest AI and ML-based technologies to enhance effectiveness in education and have been featured by Forbes Technology Council as one of the most innovative products globally. Prior to this startup, Raghu was a business head in a renewable energy firm where he established their electric vehicles and retail business. Raghuram has also served in the Indian Army for more than 15 years and retired as a colonel. During his tenure in the Army, he was awarded 4 commendation cards for distinguished service and gallantry. We are so honored to have you, and now I would request you to take the session forward. Over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Tanvi. Uh, and I'm so happy to be here. This is, I think, the second time I'm getting associated with the AIM program. And, the first program was quite interesting, met such wonderful kids. So I'm looking forward to interacting with the school kids again, this version 2.0. So that being said, I'll just start by sharing my screen and we can take it ahead. Okay. Tanvi, can you see my screen?
Yes, I'm able to see it now.
Okay, great. Okay. This is how I plan to, conduct our discussion today. I'll start with a brief recap of whatever the students have already undergone in the boot camp. I believe many of the students have already taken the pitching self-based, self-learning content. And thereafter, I'm going to briefly talk about what is, a business pitch, why do we do it, and whom do we do it to, and some aspects about how, what are the good ways, effective ways of, making a pitch and presenting it. Now, starting with the recap, uh, the self-paced learning covered these 4 topics. It started off with what is pitching, why do we need to pitch, how to pitch an idea, and then I gave a sample pitch text of, I think, Uber and BuzzFeed. So I'm not going to repeat whatever has been taught already in this content, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to very briefly touch upon what pitching is and what is the need for us to actually pitch. Very briefly, a business pitch is nothing but a short presentation in which we are describing a business idea. Now, the audience could be different. It could be a potential investor, it could be a friend who's actually listening to what the idea is about. The audience could be different, but the end state is that you are explaining what your vision is and what your business is all about. Why do we pitch? This has been already covered in the content earlier, but just to very briefly touch upon it once again, these are the 7 major reasons why we normally have a business pitch. First and foremost is idea validation. So when you have an idea, you would actually like to discuss it with someone close to you, or some expert who can tell you whether you are on the right lines. Is there a good market? What are the problems that you're likely to face while executing that idea? and that is the first step. Thereafter, once you have actually built, once you have actually progressed, taking your idea a little ahead, then comes the okay, I think there's some audio issue. I'll just switch off my camera. Ranveer, is this okay now?
Yes, sir. You can. No, go ahead. You can. No, go ahead.
Okay. So, I have put this in the sequence in which they're likely to occur. So once you have discussed about the idea validation, you have pitched your idea and got validation from your friends or experts on how good or bad your idea is. You set about developing a minimum viable product, and once the minimum viable product is developed, you are likely to again reach out to experts to get an idea on how the product can be improved further. So for example, in my case, once we actually developed our product, we discussed in detail about the architecture with a lot of experts on how to actually make the architecture more efficient so as to reduce our costs. And uh, similarly, based on what your business is, there is a whole scope for improvement, because everybody, we can't be an expert in everything. The improvement can only happen in increments. So once your product is improved at this stage, probably you would also like to reach out to investors, because now you have a minimum viable product. And at this stage, probably this is the idea stage of your startup, and probably you'll reach out to investors, tell them what your idea is, and try to get them interested in your product. Next is how to develop awareness about the product. Now this is important because once you have your product ready, you definitely would like to sell the product, get more customers on board, increase your revenue base. And you are likely to reach out through some means of communication with the customers. And of course, when you're doing carrying out sales, whether it is with the business or with the customers directly, or even networking, where you are actually trying to speak to friends and try to get connected to mutual connections. So roughly, these are the various scenarios in which we are likely to pitch. One thing that I want the students to notice is, at every stage, the one thing is common, that is you and your business. What is not common is the content and the audience. This keeps changing with the objective that you have. When you're trying to discuss about your idea, the content would be different. When you're trying to discuss about product improvement, again the content would be different. So this is what I will try to explain in some more detail in the next slide. Okay. So like I mentioned earlier, when you are at the idea validation stage, you are likely to be reaching out to experts or your friends, the people you know directly. At that point, your pitch would contain what the problem is that you're trying to solve, what is the market research that you have done, and what is the solution that you have in mind, and the total addressable market, whether the solution is worth the effort. Are you likely to, how likely are you to get rewarded for developing this solution? When you come to the product improvement stage, you are likely to interact with the experts in that domain, and also potential customers, because you are likely to get inputs from the initial lot of customers who have used your product. So here, your pitch deck, the content would be different slightly. Again, it would be definitely having what is the problem that you're trying to solve, what are the features that you have built into the product, what is the technology that you have used, and how is your business, how are you structured your operations to make your business very efficient, and of course, what is the feedback that you have got from your customers. Now, what I want you to notice here is the content now is mainly focused towards giving more inputs, as many inputs as possible about the actual product and the product features to the experts, so that they are able to guide you in a better manner on how you can further improve upon the product and its features. When you're talking about increasing awareness of the product, again, it's going to be a simple elevator pitch or a business pitch that the you guys have already learnt about. Sales pitches are slightly different, where the customer, the person you're going to interact with are going to be the customers, and now again, there'll be of two types: the decision makers and the gatekeepers. I'll speak a little more about gatekeepers and decision makers, subsequently. But here, the content of your pitch would be focused more towards your product features. What are the benefits that your users can derive by using this product, and what is the competition doing? How good is your product compared to the competition? And lastly, networking and attracting investors. When you're doing these kind of pitches, it's mainly the elevator pitches or the business pitches. Attracting investors, again, it depends on which stage your startup is. Here, I will go into slightly more detail in the next slide. But the key takeaway from this slide, friends, is the the audience and the content in your pitch deck depends on what is the objective that you're trying to achieve. That is the key takeaway. I spoke about the different types of investors that you are likely to encounter at different stages of your startup. Now, the content of your pitch deck also will change according to the stage at which your startup is at that point of time. So normally a startup goes through three stages. One is the development stage, which is the initial stage where you have just formulated the idea, you have envisaged your idea. At this stage, what is the entrepreneur involved in? He is involved in identifying the correct solution for the problem. It's called the problem solution fit. Next is how do we develop the customers, and whether the problem, finding a problem which is actually worth solving. And what I mean by this is there ultimately business is about making money, and if you are if you're trying to solve a problem which is actually not going to give you a good return on investment, it's probably not a good business idea. Finding a viable solution is finding the most efficient solution in which you're saving money and you're creating the maximum margins while doing that. You're trying to interact more with the customers during this stage to get maximum inputs on your products, and which you can actually gainfully use to develop the product more. Now, who are the audience for you at this stage? It is the friends and family, because normally at this stage you are able to raise investments from your friends or family. Because unless an investor knows you personally, he's not going to be investing in your idea. What is the content of the pitch? The content of the pitch will be focused on what your story is. I mean, what your vision is. What do you think? Why do you think the problem is so important to be solved? And how are you planning to solve it? And of course, a little bit more about your team who's going to be helping you do it. Aim here is to inspire confidence into the people who are going to invest their money on you, because the risk is maximum at this stage. Now coming to the growth stage, here you will be more busy with identifying the product market fit. So what it means is whether your product is meeting the need of that particular customer segment uh, to the T perfectly or not. Your product has already been used by a lot of people, and you are more focused on getting validation from the customers, retaining their customers so that they are repeat users. You are validating your product and your business model as well, and you have short term growth plans, maybe 1 year or 2 years. Here you're more likely to interact and pitch your ideas to angel investors who specialize in investing in startups at this at the growth stage. Now your the content of your pitch deck now would be slightly different, where you are likely to include a little bit more. You are likely to include what are your growth plans for the next 2 years. What are your targets in terms of revenue, in terms of number of customers, etc. So this I presume there has been a separate class on this for you guys. Now, once your startup grows a little bit more and you are now in the expansion stage, you are more focused towards scaling up your company, creating new customers, and then you are planning to expand your business into new verticals, that is new, uh, 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 you know, uh, products, or in fact, even new geographies. Here, the audience would be the venture capitalists or private equity firms. Now, uh, these folks normally invest only after you have attained certain revenue targets. Before that, they normally don't engage with startups. Here, again, in addition to whatever you have already done, what is new in your pitch deck? It is going to be your strategic plans on how these VCs are going to, attain their desired return on investments. Now, one thing which I want you to note is why an investor basically invests in a startup. Okay, everything boils down to money. Everything boils down to how much money is the investor going to make by investing in your startup. What are the alternatives that he or she has? uh, they can put their money in a bank account, in which case probably they'll get around 4% return on their investment. Or they can probably put it on fixed deposits, where probably they'll get around 6.5%. Or they can invest in mutual funds, where probably they'll get say 10 to 25% interest. Or they can go to stock market, where the risk is even higher, and they can earn anywhere from a negative 25% to positive 120%, if you consider the figures of the last 10 years. But of late, why people have started investing in startups is because the returns that they expect is nearly 10x to even 150x. That is, if you're able to show a revenue of 1 crore now, probably they see the potential of earning 5 times that within, say, 3 years or 4 years. So once they see that kind of returns, they're more willing and interested in investing in your startup. So this is important to understand, because everything that drives investors is, because investors are also not investing their own money. They're probably collecting money from a lot of individuals and then investing in your idea. So they are accountable to others as well. Unless, of course, it's impact investing where they are investing into social causes, which is a different ball game altogether, which I won't, probably discuss at this stage. So now, having discussed what a pitch deck basically should what you should actually target when you talk, depending on the audience or the objective, you will now start preparing your pitch deck. Now, normally, pitch deck has three components. The first is the hook. The second is the content or the main body of the presentation, and finally is the closing statements. We will discuss a slide in detail. Each of these now. What do you mean by a hook? A hook is nothing but normally there have been studies which say that people lose interest within the first few minutes of your pitch. 90% of the people lose interest in within the first few minutes. So how do we retain their interest for the whole duration of 20 minutes or 10 minutes or 5 minutes pitch, whatever you have prepared? That is the importance of hook. Your hook has to be designed in such a way that you are able to capture and retain the interest of the audience for the whole duration of your presentation. There can be many types of hooks. uh, some people use an elevator pitch as a hook. Elevator pitch is nothing but probably a 30-second summary of your entire business pitch. But some people also use a preview where they ab initio tell that what they are going to cover, and then what are the different slides and which categories of issues that they're going to be discussing. But the most common and effective hook is when you are telling a story. There are various ways of actually storytelling. People use hope, they use fear, they have a hero in their hook, or they try to arouse curiosity. And so just to give you an example, if you're trying to use the hope hook, uh, imagine you are a startup in which you are starting an app based, or you are having an IoT device for measuring a blood sugar levels. So probably your hook would be something like what I have mentioned in the screen here. How many of you would like to monitor your blood sugar level accurately? And with this information, you can actually alter your diet to achieve optimal health. So when you're talking to a customer who is a blood sugar patient or a diabetic, you are more likely to use this hook to keep him interested. When you use a fear hook, it's something like this. If there are 100 people in this room, uh, three of us are going to be a diabetic. Are you going to be one of them? Are you going to take a chance? Don't you want to be sure whether you are going to be a diabetic or not? So something like this. Strategic narrative is, when you're trying to build a story of uh, where uh, you were, where you are right now, and what you see your company becoming in future. And of course, the kind of hooks that you use, again, it depends on the audience. You need to research the audience into what actually will keep him interested, what his needs are. So because y- everybody cannot be interested with a fear hook. Probably I don't really care about diabetic, I'm not a diabetic, so that might not work on me. So probably if you talk about money, I might be interested. So you, while deciding the kind of a hook, you also need to actually research the audience a little bit more, and tailor the presentation, keeping that person in mind. So when you come to the content, I think you already had a class on what the content in a pitch deck needs to be. But if I have to give you a brief overview, you can actually organize your content into four logical parts. Because if I am, for example, you think from the perspective of an investor, I would like to know, if I am investing 1 crore in your startup, I want to know, firstly, is there a need for this product in the market or not? And if there is a need, how big a need is it? Is it just 1,000 people using, or 1 lakh people using, or is it going to be 1 million or 2 million people using? Because the number of people using it is going to determine how much money I'm going to make back in return. Once you have established the need, you would probably discuss about your approach on how you're going to address that need. What is the solution that you have in mind? And what is the business model you have in mind to keep your profits, to maximize your profits? And finally, what is your go to market strategy? How are you going to actually reach out to the customers? A big part of the go to market strategy is to identify your target customers and position your product accordingly. That is the key part. Because if you're not able to do that, then you're not able to meet your revenue goals. You're going to fail even before you actually start. Once you have established the need, once you have established how you are going to approach the problem, you are going to talk about the benefits. uh, why the customer wants this product, and why should I as an investor believe that you have the capability to actually solve this problem. That's where you talk about your team, where you give the investor the confidence that you have a good team to actually come up with a good solution. You're also going to talk about the financials, where going to speak about what are the likely revenues, what are the likely margins, what are the customer base that you're going to develop. Ideally, it's better that you logically you should do it in phases, so that because any business is not built overnight. It has to be incremental. So once you give the figures in an incremental manner, that phase one I'm going to do this, phase two I'm going to do this, that will inspire more confidence. You can also talk about synergy with other investments that the investor has already made. For example, in my case, say I have an education edtech company. Now the investors with whom I'm interacting, he has invested in another say a startup which is also into education, and it can use my product. I'm sorry about the background noise. So what can happen is I can actually convey a communication to the investor that, look, uh, this is my target segment, and I also know that you have invested in so and so company. I can be a good, your the other company can be a good customer for my startup as well. So once the investor sees this kind of a synergy, he is more likely to get interested, because that is actually building value into his other investments as well. Lastly, when you have done all this, you are going to talk about the competition. What is the competitive landscape? How many competitors are there? And what you will also describe their solution. How are they solving this problem? And finally, why is your solution better? Because if there are so many people doing the same thing, why should I invest my money if everybody is doing the same thing? You have to find a way to convince me that your solution is better than the competitions. So once you have covered the content in detail, you will probably now close your pitch by telling the audience what you want. Say, this is the investment that I want, and this is what I'm going to do with your 1 crore that you're going to give me. Now, if the pitch is for, say, a product improvement point of view, you're going to say, okay, now I have explained my product features. What do you think? Where can I improve my product? One thing I will recommend here is, if you're asking for funds, you also it's probably a good idea to include why you need the funds now, because investors get a whole lot of investment proposals. But if they see that yours is a good idea, but there's a very small window in which I can invest your company, and if I invest it right now, I'm going to get the maximum returns. So if you're able to identify any such need, then that's a good thing to put on your pitch deck. So now we have actually discussed how to prepare the pitch deck. There are some important points now, which I will just share with you. This is out of experience, as well as what we have learned from our mentors as well. First thing is, uh, as far as your audience are concerned, you need to research your audience. You should know everything about them, where they work, what exactly do they do, what are the kind of problems that they see, what is their area of expertise, what is their interest. So once you know all this, you will get an idea, you will get an insight on how exactly should I speak to her. This will also give you an insight into what kind of questions he's likely to ask you. For example, if yours is a very tech enabled product, say you're building a chatbot for a company, and if your audience is not a tech savvy guy, you are interacting with a very a simple guy who's got a lot of money. He's probably not going to ask you technical questions. He's probably going to ask you more finance related questions, or market research related questions. Research the market extensively, because uh, if the audience feels that there is an existing competitor and you don't know about him, it's actually doesn't inspire confidence. And like I said, every investor is different, their needs are different. You have to research for fit. Some investors like to invest only in education. Some investors focus more on technology. And if yours is a healthcare oriented product, probably he's not going to be interested. So there's no point in wasting your time and his time. Highlight the specific investor's appeal. So what is he what is in it for him? Don't forget to explain what the fund is going to be utilized for. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, what is the return on investment? That's the key. So when you talk about content, avoid the temptation to put everything into your presentation. Limit yourself to the most important content, and as the conversation progresses, you can keep down the other things that you're not putting on the slide, and then say, yeah, see, apart from this, we are also we can also do this. Every slide and every word should be able to deliver some value. If there is a bullet point which is actually not going to contribute any value, please remove it. Slides have to be in a logical order. Don't confuse the audience by going haywire. You're talking about need, and then you're suddenly going to finances, and then going back to market research. That's You're just going to confuse him, and it is also going to tell the investor that you're a very confused soul, and it'll make him very scared to invest in you. Whatever statistics you quote in your pitch deck, please cite the sources. This will give credibility. And if you have a few customers already, please share screenshots of the engagement that you have already had. Either it could be their testimonials or how much time they have used your product, a whole lot of things. Your content definitely should explain to the investor or the viewer why is it worth investing in that product. Why should the investor invest in you? What makes you so special? Why can't I invest in the other guy who's doing the same thing? Why should the customer buy your product? What is the value that you're offering which is better than what the competitors are offering? So these are some important things that you need to keep in mind while thinking about your content. Next is visual appeal. How good are your slides appearing to the audience? Keep it clutter free, keep it very brief. Your text has to be minimal, but choose your words so that they derive they give you the maximum impact. You can think of videos in your pitch deck. That's a Just make sure that the video is not too long, and the video is not eating away too much of bandwidth. For example, now I'm sitting in a small town. I'm usually in Hyderabad where the internet bandwidth is good, but right now I'm in a small town where the bandwidth is not so great. So now, if had I put videos in my presentation, I wouldn't have been able to even share my screen or the presentation seamlessly. There is another problem with putting videos or animations in your pitch deck. While networking, the people your audience are likely to actually share your presentation on WhatsApp or email. And normal way to do this, currently is to convert your PDF to you convert your presentations into PDF and then share the PDF. But once you have a lot of animations, it becomes difficult to share. Once you convert into a PDF, the meaning that you are actually trying to convey is lost. Just keep that in mind. So if your pitch is going to be online, or is if you are going to send it through social media, try to avoid animations or video. Next point is about how you deliver your pitch deck. I think you this aspect has been discussed in detail in your content earlier. The most important thing you need to remember is, when you are pitching your ability to actually deliver. So if you yourself are not confident, that's actually not inspiring the viewer into your capability to deliver what you are actually claiming. So your confidence is directly proportional to the investors confidence in actually you. So just keep your slides very simple and keep practicing. That is the key. Last but not the least, uh, about networking. This is one of the most important aspects when you're actually for any entrepreneur. This is the cheapest way to actually get connected to people who matter. Okay, so it's, for example, your father knows someone in an investment bank. You approach through him, so it actually cuts down. It removes all the gatekeepers. Identify suitable investors through mutual connections. Keep your updated pitch deck ready. I have seen in your self-paced learning that where they spoke about different pitch decks of varying lengths, 5 second, 30 second, or even a 10-minute pitch deck. So just keep it ready, because you never know when opportunity is going to come by. For example, in my case itself, I met a very interesting guy at an airport where we were discussing about my product, and then he suggested that I should contact his brother who is also looking for something like this. So you never know, and which brings out another important point, that whenever you talk about your product to anybody, just think that it is a pitch to an investor. So every time you talk about your product, give your 100% while doing it. Some soft skills that you need to have is, you need to remember names. That will actually help you a lot. As far as gatekeepers are concerned, research them. The decision in a company, who is actually taking decisions, who is actually not, who is a gatekeeper. When you are trying to approach a gatekeeper, be very polite. Talk be personable, that basically that person should like you for what you are. Be honest and be upfront that, look, I want your help, and this is my product. I have researched about your company, and I feel that I'm confident that my product will be able to add value. So how can you help me set up a meeting with the decision maker? So a very polite way of approaching like this will help you, because you need to remember, you're not the only guy who's reaching there. Maybe the gatekeeper has been placed there for a purpose, to stop thousands of people from reaching the decision maker. Follow through. So if you have pitched, you have not heard back, just, there's no harm in actually going back to them after a week or so and asking them, look, I haven't heard back from you, and is there any other information that you would like us to give, which can probably make it easier for you to take a decision. Last but not the least, startup accelerators are a good place to actually uh, give you a foothold into this community. So when you have a good idea or a minimum product ready, that's a good option to consider. So I have actually finished my presentation. I think there are some videos. Sorry, there are some questions in the chat box. I'll just try to open it. I'm sorry. Normally, I don't use WebEx. Okay. So the first is, any views on adding ESG aspect into the pitch? This is noticing the growing importance and investors in ESG. So ESG is environment, social and governance aspects. So yes, so of late there is a lot of focus on ESG, on how carbon neutral your startup is, on how you're going to contribute to a greener earth. So if your product is something that is actually doing something about it, then definitely it's a good thing to have, because now the thought process at high levels is they're going to actually ESG is going to be one of the ways in which the companies are going to be taxed on how green they are. So this is going to be an important aspect in the times to come. Now, if one way of actually doing this is, how can your product help in uh, probably reduce. Now what you need to understand is, how is how are you contributing to the environment. So if you are reducing the time it takes to do certain work, so probably you are contributing in some manner. So approach it from that perspective, and think about adding those pointers. For business growth, the new product or product modification funneling plans can be shared. Okay. Okay. So the next question is about the product pipeline. For business growth, the new product or a product modification plans can be shared, projecting incremental volume and revenue. Any inputs on how to do it best? So, like I mentioned, one way is to talk about your product uh, strategy. That look, right now this is my minimum viable product, and 6 months down the line, these are the features that we are going to add in. Because what you need to remember is resources are a constraint. You can't achieve 100% of the product that you actually planned on day one. You need time, you need money, and you need resources. This can only be done incrementally as and when the money keeps coming in. So how I have done it in my startup is, we first developed the minimum viable product, in which the must have features we included. Okay, now it links back to your market research. Once you're identifying the problem statement, you need to identify which are the problems which are critical, which must be solved under any circumstance. So those are the features that I will keep it in the minimum viable product. Now, once you have funds, you hire people, then thereafter you can actually start developing more features which can add value to your product. So this can be probably in 6 months time frame, or it can be 1 year time frame. So how normally I have seen people doing it is linking your product. First you show your product pipeline or product strategy, that these are the features that we want to have, but the minimum viable product will have these features, and the rest of them are linked with the time and investment. And what is the time? 6 months, these are the products that we will develop, and 1 year, these are the products that we are going to develop. The advantage of this is, uh, now your investor has a good clarity of uh, where the product is going to go. You're also inspiring confidence that these people have a good idea of what they're going to do with the money. You can also go one step ahead and say that, look, once I develop the full stack of products, this is the revenue that I'm likely to generate. So I hope I have answered that question. uh, Tanvi, any other questions? I'm done.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. So we are actually looking at the chat box and waiting for some more questions. But for now, we had those questions, and I would like to thank you, Raghuram, for conducting such a great session. And I would say that you had really digged deep into the complex concepts, and you explained it with so much ease. And I'm sure that all the students who had joined us for the session, they have learned a lot. And going from the questions, I see that they want to know more about these concepts in much more detail. So I would like to thank you for conducting this session. And I would also like to thank everybody in the entire audience who joined us on YouTube for the session. So with this, I would like to close the session. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks everybody. Thank you so much, Tanvi.